The camera zooms through a narrow, dimly lit corridor, peeling paint, cold concrete, and the faint echo of metal doors slamming shut. A man's voice breaks the silence, trembling but defiant. You think UK prisons are easy? Try waking up with rats crawling over your blanket, with no heat, no sleep, and a guard who don't care if you live or die. The screen cuts to a shot of a flooded cell, brown water rising from the toilet, mixing with food scraps and dirt. Inmates are shouting for help, but no one comes. They say UK prisons are soft, another voice says bitterly. But nobody talks about the mold on the walls, the screams at night, and the smell that never leaves your clothes. The light flickers. The sound of an alarm blares. A guard's voice yells from down the hall. Everyone, lock down. Now! A fight has broken out in the wing. Someone's bleeding, and the screams get louder. Fade to black. This is the real life behind closed doors. The arrival. It was a cold morning when 28-year-old Ryan Carter arrived at HMP Brinsfield, a medium-security prison tucked deep in the English countryside. He'd been sentenced to 5 years for a string of burglaries, small-time crimes, stupid mistakes, the kind that came from bad luck and worse friends. As the van doors opened, a gust of damp air hit him. The smell was unforgettable: metal, sweat, and disinfectant. Welcome to Brinsfield, the officer said flatly. You'll get used to it. But Ryan didn't. Not even close. The prison wasn't what he'd seen on TV. There were no calm libraries, no polite guards handing out tea. Instead, there was noise, constant shouting, banging, threats thrown down the hallways like grenades. His cell was small, barely enough space to stretch his arms. The mattress was thin and stained, the sink rusted, and the toilet didn't flush properly. It's not that bad, mate, his cellmate Darren said with a grin. Wait till you see dinner. That night, Ryan learned what prison food really was. A scoop of watery stew, a cold potato, and something that looked like bread but smelled like damp cardboard. He tried to sleep, but the shouting never stopped. Someone screamed for help down the hall. A fight broke out in another cell. Guards rushed past, batons ready. Ryan stared at the ceiling. He thought of his mother, who believed he'd be safe, that prison in the UK was about rehabilitation. He couldn't stop thinking about what Darren whispered before lights out. Rehab? Nah, bruv. This place'll break you before it ever fixes you. Days turned into weeks. Ryan started to see things differently. The inmates ran their own order, the guards only pretended to. Drugs moved through the halls like oxygen. Mobile phones buzzed under pillows. Debts were settled with fists, not words. Still, there were moments of calm, watching pigeons through the tiny window, hearing distant laughter from the kitchen crew. Those were the lows, the quiet parts that made the chaos hit harder. Then came the incident. One evening, as dinner trays were being collected, a loud crash echoed through the wing. Someone had flipped a table. Guards shouted for order, but no one listened. Ryan froze when he saw it, 2 inmates fighting near the laundry room. One had a broken broom handle. The other was bleeding from his face. Oi! Back up, a guard yelled. But before Ryan could move, the alarm blared. Red lights flashed. The doors slammed shut. The fight didn't stop, it spread. Inmates were shouting, smashing, throwing whatever they could grab. Smoke began to fill the air from something burning in the corner. Ryan's heart pounded as he realized, this wasn't just another fight. This was a riot. And he was trapped in the middle of it. The riot. The sound was deafening, metal clanging, men shouting, alarms screaming. Ryan's heart was thumping so hard he could feel it in his throat. The air grew thick with smoke and panic. Get down, Ryan. Get down. Darren shouted, dragging him behind a broken table. Flames licked up the side of a torn mattress in the corner. Someone had set it on fire using bits of tissue and a lighter they weren't supposed to have. The guards were shouting from behind the security doors, but they didn't dare come in. For the first time, Ryan realized something chilling: the prisoners ran this place tonight. One of the older inmates, Big Leon, climbed onto a chair and shouted over the noise. No more lockdowns. We want heat, food, and respect. You hear me? The crowd roared. Men banged on the walls, their fists echoing like drums. Ryan crouched low, clutching his knees. He didn't want to be part of this, but in a riot, you don't get to choose sides. Smoke made his eyes sting. The lights flickered. He could hear the guards calling for reinforcements over the radio. Then, bang! A metal tray smashed against the wall right beside his head. The riot was spreading to other wings. The whole prison was going up in chaos. Darren's voice was shaking now. We gotta get out of this block, mate. If the fire spreads, we're dead. Ryan followed him toward the back corridor where the smoke was thinner. The emergency doors were locked, but a few inmates had already broken one of the hinges. Suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos. Back up! Back up now! A team of riot officers stormed in, shields up, batons ready. They fired tear gas canisters into the corridor. The air filled with white smoke that burned Ryan's throat and eyes. Face down. Everyone face down. Coughing and choking, Ryan dropped to the floor. He could hear Darren cursing beside him, gasping for air. One by one, the shouting faded, replaced by the heavy stomp of boots and the crack of batons. When Ryan finally opened his eyes, the riot was over. The floor was littered with spilled trays, torn clothes, and blood. The walls were black with soot. They were dragged to the gymnasium, turned into a temporary holding area. Rows of inmates sat handcuffed, heads down, guarded by officers in black gear. Hours passed. The adrenaline faded, replaced by fear. Ryan's wrists hurt from the cuffs. His mouth was dry. He thought it was over, until he heard his name. Carter. Ryan Carter. A guard pointed at him. Governor wants a word. Move. Ryan's stomach sank. He didn't do anything, at least, he didn't think he had. But in prison, being in the wrong place was enough. He was led down a corridor lined with cracked tiles and fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. At the end was a glass office, and inside sat Governor Thompson, the prison warden. She looked tired, angry, and disappointed all at once. You were in D-Wing, yes? Yes, ma'am. And you expect me to believe you had nothing to do with this? Ryan shook his head. I swear, I didn't. I just... She cut him off. Save it. You're going to segregation until we figure this out. The words hit him like a punch. Segregation, the block. 23 hours a day in a cell the size of a closet. No TV, no phone, no company. As the guards led him away, Ryan glanced back through the glass. The prison looked calm again from the outside. But he knew better now. Behind those doors, order was only an illusion. And as the cell door slammed shut behind him, Ryan heard a sound that froze his blood. A voice from the next cell, whispering his name. Carter, you're the one they're blaming for all this. The hole. The door slammed shut behind Ryan with a heavy metallic thud. Segregation, known among inmates as the hole, was silent except for the faint buzz of the fluorescent light. The walls were off-white, cracked, and stained with old fingerprints. There was no window, only a tiny slit near the ceiling that let in a trace of cold air. A hard plastic bed, a thin blanket, and a toilet in the corner, that was all. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. He could still hear echoes of the riot in his head, the shouting, the fire, the chaos. He didn't start it. He didn't even join it. But that didn't matter. In prison, truth came second. Survival came first. Hours passed. Maybe days, he couldn't tell anymore. The lights never changed. Food came through a slot in the door, cold porridge, dry bread, and once, a bruised apple. Then, one night, the whisper came again. Carter, you still alive in there? It was the same voice from before, the inmate next door. Ryan hesitated, then whispered back, yeah, who are you? Name's Reese. I was in D-Wing too. Word is, they think you lit the fire. Ryan froze. His stomach turned to ice. That's a lie. Doesn't matter, mate. The guards think it. Some of the lads think it too. If they believe you started it, you're done. Ryan leaned his head against the wall, heart racing. He didn't know which was worse, being blamed by the guards, or being marked by the inmates. The next morning, the door opened without warning. 2 guards stood there, faces blank. Carter. Governor wants you again. Ryan was led down a long corridor, his wrists cuffed. This time, the warden wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was a police detective, badge glinting under the light. Mr. Carter, the detective said, you've been named by 3 witnesses as the one who started the riot. Care to explain? Ryan's throat went dry. That's not true. I didn't start anything. I was just trying to get away from the fire. The detective scribbled something in his notepad. Funny. Because someone saw you near the laundry room, holding a lighter. Ryan blinked in shock. He had been near the laundry room, but the lighter wasn't his. It was Darren's. He remembered Darren flicking it nervously before the smoke filled the air. It wasn't me, Ryan said firmly. You can check the cameras. The warden sighed. We did. Most of the cameras went dark during the riot. Silence filled the room. Ryan could feel his heart pounding in his ears. Then the detective leaned forward, his voice calm but cold. Until we can verify otherwise, you'll remain in segregation. And if it turns out you did start it, you're looking at new charges. As they dragged him back to his cell, Ryan's mind was spinning. How could this happen? How could a quiet night turn into a riot, and now into an accusation? He didn't notice the envelope slipped under his cell door until later that night. No name. No return address. Just a small folded note inside. It read, you took the blame. Now, keep your mouth shut, or you'll get worse than the hole." Ryan's hands shook as he read it. The handwriting was rough, rushed, but familiar. It was Darren's. Before he could even process it, the lights went out with a loud click. Darkness swallowed the cell. Then came a sound that made his blood run cold. The slow, deliberate scrape of metal against the outside of his door. Someone was there. And they weren't supposed to be. The shadows in the dark. Ryan held his breath. The scraping sound outside his door grew louder, slow, steady, like someone dragging metal along the floor. He squinted toward the gap under the door. A faint orange glow flickered on the other side. "Who's there?" he whispered. No answer. Then, clink, something small slid under the door and rolled to a stop by his shoe. He picked it up carefully. It was a sharpened toothbrush, the kind inmates used as a weapon. Ryan's stomach dropped. That wasn't a threat. That was a warning. Someone wanted him to know he was next. He shouted for the guards, but his voice bounced off the walls and faded into nothing. No one came. The wing was quiet, too quiet. Minutes felt like hours. He pressed his ear to the door. Footsteps. Whispering. Then nothing again. He barely slept that night. Every creak, every shadow made him jump. When morning came, the guards finally opened the door to hand him breakfast. Ryan held up the toothbrush, his hand shaking. "Someone slipped this under my door last night." The guard looked at it, unimpressed. "Yeah? Maybe you dropped it. I don't even have a toothbrush that sharp. Then maybe someone's playing games. Welcome to segregation, Carter." The guard shut the door again with a loud clang. Ryan stood there in disbelief. No one cared. Not the guards, not the governor, no one. He was alone. That afternoon, Reese's voice came through the wall again, quiet but urgent. "You all right, mate?" "No," Ryan whispered back. "Someone's coming after me. I found a shank under my door. Listen, you need to keep your head down. Don't talk to no one. They think you snitched." "Snitched? On what?" "Doesn't matter. Once they say you did, you're marked." Ryan leaned his head back, panic flooding his chest. It didn't make sense. He didn't tell anyone anything. But in prison, truth was a luxury. Rumors were currency. That evening, the guards came again. "Carter. You're moving." Ryan blinked. "Moving? Where?" "Back to general population. Orders from above." He didn't argue. Maybe it meant they finally believed him. Maybe this nightmare was ending. But the moment he stepped back into D-Wing, he felt it, eyes watching him from every direction. Whispers followed him down the corridor. He caught pieces of conversation. "That's him, started the fire, snitched to the governor." Darren was there too, standing by the cell doors. Their eyes met for the first time since the riot. Darren's face was calm, but his eyes were cold. "You should have kept quiet, bruv," he said softly. "Now everyone's looking for you." Ryan's chest tightened. "You set me up, didn't you? You think anyone's gonna believe you over me?" Darren smirked. "You're just another screw-up." Before Ryan could respond, a shout came from down the hall. "Carter. Shower time. Let's go." The guards led him to the showers, a long, tiled room that smelled of bleach and mold. He was alone inside. No guards watching, no cameras in this corner. He turned on the tap, water hissing down. Then, he heard the door behind him creak open. He froze. The steam thickened. Footsteps echoed softly on the tiles. 3 shadows appeared through the mist, faces he recognized from D-Wing. They weren't there to talk. "You should have kept your mouth shut," one of them said. Ryan backed up until his shoulders hit the cold wall. His mind raced, no guards, no escape. The first punch came fast, catching him across the jaw. He stumbled, slipped on the wet floor, and hit the ground hard. The second inmate kicked him in the ribs. Pain shot through his side. "You brought the heat down on all of us." Ryan tried to crawl away, coughing, gasping, his vision blurry. He grabbed a loose metal bar from the floor, the broken piece of a soap holder, and swung wildly. It connected with a thud. Someone screamed. The other 2 backed off for a second, shocked. Ryan scrambled to his feet, dripping, bruised, desperate. Just then, the alarm blared again. Guards stormed in, shouting, pulling the attackers off him. Ryan collapsed against the wall, blood mixing with water on the tiles. Everything spun. The last thing he heard before passing out was a guard yelling, "He's not breathing properly, get the nurse, now." And then, darkness. The aftermath. When Ryan opened his eyes, the light was too bright. For a second, he didn't know where he was. His head throbbed, his ribs ached, and his mouth was dry. The smell of disinfectant told him before his eyes did, he was in the infirmary. He tried to sit up, but pain shot through his side. A nurse rushed over, gently pushing him back. "Easy, love. You took quite a beating." Ryan blinked, trying to focus. The room was quiet except for the steady beep of a monitor and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. He could see other inmates lying in beds across the room, some wrapped in bandages, others sleeping under thin blankets. "How long have I been here?" he croaked. 2 days, the nurse replied softly. "You had a cracked rib and a concussion. Lucky the guards found you when they did." Lucky. He didn't feel lucky. He stared up at the ceiling, memories rushing back, the shadows, the fists, Darren's cold smirk. He knew now, it wasn't random. Someone had ordered that attack. Hours later, a guard entered the room. Not just any guard, Officer Miles, one of the few Ryan thought he could trust. He was tall, quiet, and didn't treat inmates like animals. "Carter," Miles said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "You've got to keep your head down. You're in deep now." "I didn't start the riot," Ryan said weakly. "Doesn't matter. The word's out. Someone wants you gone before you talk." Ryan frowned. "Before I talk? About what?" "About the phones, Carter. About the drug shipments coming in through the laundry. You were seen there the night of the riot." Ryan stared at him. "I didn't know anything about that." "Maybe not. But someone thinks you do. Darren's mixed up with people way higher than you realize." Miles lowered his voice. "There's more going on in this prison than you can imagine. Keep quiet and stay alive. That's all you can do for now." He turned to leave, but Ryan called out, "Officer Miles, if I tell you who slipped that weapon under my door, can you protect me?" Miles stopped. His face tightened. "There's no protection in here, Carter. Not really." And with that, he walked away. The next day, Ryan was released from the infirmary and moved to a new wing, F-wing, supposedly safer. But he could feel the tension everywhere he went. Conversations went silent when he passed. Eyes followed him from the tables in the canteen. At night, he could hear whispers through the vents. His name. Darren's name. Something was being planned. He couldn't shake the feeling that Darren had more power than anyone knew. Even some guards seemed to look away when Darren spoke. One evening, while cleaning in the hallway, Ryan overheard 2 officers talking quietly near the staff room. "You hear what they found in the governor's office?" "Yeah, that folder on D-Wing. If the press ever sees it, Brinsfield's finished." Ryan froze mid-step. "A folder? On D-Wing? That's where the riot started. That's where the shipments came in. Could it be proof?" That night, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. If that folder really existed, it could clear his name, or destroy him completely. Either way, it was the first real lead he'd had. He made up his mind. He was going to find out what was inside that folder. But as he turned onto his side to rest, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Under his pillow, someone had slipped a note. It said, "Stop asking questions, or you'll leave this place in a body bag." And underneath the note was a single item. A burnt corner of a folder labeled D-Wing Incident Report. Ryan's hand trembled as he stared at it. Someone inside the prison didn't just want to silence him. They were watching his every move. And now, he knew too much to ever be safe again. The file that shouldn't exist. Ryan barely slept that night. Every sound, the creak of pipes, the slam of a cell door, the distant echo of keys, felt like a threat. He kept staring at the burnt corner of that folder, turning it over in his hands. D-Wing Incident Report. The edges were singed, the ink slightly smudged, but one thing stood out clearly: restricted access, internal use only. That meant the file was supposed to be in the governor's office, not under his pillow. Someone inside had slipped it to him, but why? When morning came, Ryan tucked the paper deep inside his mattress and forced himself to act normal. At breakfast, Darren and his crew sat across the room, laughing with other inmates like nothing had ever happened. But every now and then, Darren's eyes flicked toward him, sharp, cold, knowing. Ryan kept his head down. He had one goal now: find the rest of that file and prove what really happened the night of the riot. Later that day, during cleaning duty, Ryan saw Officer Miles again. He was mopping the corridor near the staff area when Miles walked past. Without turning his head, Miles muttered quietly, "Meet me in the laundry room tonight. Late. Alone." Then he kept walking. Ryan's pulse quickened. The laundry room. That was where everything started. Night fell over Brinsfield. The prison was silent except for the occasional clang of distant gates. Ryan slipped out of his cell when the lights dimmed for lockdown. He moved fast and quiet, staying close to the walls, listening for footsteps. When he reached the laundry room, it was empty, machines off, the smell of detergent and damp air filling the space. He waited in the dark until the door opened slowly. Officer Miles stepped inside, flashlight in hand. "You came," Miles said softly. "You said you could help me," Ryan replied. "What's in that file?" Miles hesitated, looking toward the door as if someone might be listening. Then he pulled something from his jacket, a thin manila folder. The rest of the D-Wing report. You didn't hear this from me, Miles whispered. The riot wasn't random. It was covered up. Covered up? Drugs, phones, even weapons. Smuggled in through laundry deliveries. Some inmates found out, started talking. The riot was used as a distraction to destroy evidence. Ryan felt his stomach twist. So they blamed me to keep it quiet? Exactly. You were easy to frame, new face, no connections. Miles opened the folder to a page marked Incident 47, Classified. There was a list of names. Ryan recognized two, Darren Cole and Officer N. Miles. He froze. You're in this? Miles swallowed hard. I didn't start it. I was told to look the other way. By who? The governor. Before Ryan could respond, the sound of boots echoed down the corridor. Miles' eyes widened. Hide. Now. Ryan ducked behind a row of laundry bins as the door burst open. Two guards entered, ones he'd never seen before. They weren't on this shift. We've got a problem, one of them said. Governor wants the folder back. No witnesses. Miles tried to sound calm. You can't be serious. We're just. The first guard drew his baton. Orders are orders. Ryan's heart pounded. He couldn't breathe. He peeked over the bin just as the guard swung. Miles went down hard, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. Ryan bit his lip to stop himself from shouting. The guards grabbed the folder, flipping through the pages. It's all here, one said. Burn the rest. They turned to leave. Ryan waited until the door closed, then crawled out from hiding. Miles was lying on his side, blood trickling from his head. Miles! Ryan whispered, shaking him gently. Come on, stay with me. The officer's breathing was shallow, his eyes half open. He managed to whisper one final thing. Locker. 12, staff room, key, inside my badge. Then his hand went still. Ryan sat frozen for a moment, chest tight, eyes stinging. He didn't have time to grieve. If those guards came back, he'd be next. He pulled the broken badge from Miles' uniform and slipped it into his pocket. As he crept out of the laundry room, he saw smoke starting to curl from under the door. The guards had set it on fire to destroy what was left. The alarm hadn't sounded yet, but it would soon. He had one shot. Get to the staff room, find locker 12, and uncover whatever secret Miles died for. But as Ryan turned the corner, he froze again. Standing at the end of the hallway, blocking his way, was Darren. He was smiling. You just don't know when to quit, do you, bruv? Ryan's blood ran cold. The confrontation. The hallway was empty except for the two of them. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. The faint flicker of the ceiling light cast Darren's face in half-shadow, his smirk twisted, eyes cold and confident. You don't look surprised to see me, Darren said, his voice calm, almost amused. You knew I'd come here, Ryan replied, keeping his voice steady. Darren shrugged, stepping closer. Of course I did. You've been snooping since the riot. Didn't think you could really get away with it, did you? Ryan's fists clenched. You set me up. You burned the wing, blamed me, and let everyone think I started it. Correction, Darren said smoothly. We started it. Only difference is, you didn't know the plan. Ryan's stomach turned. You caused that chaos just to cover up the smuggling, didn't you? Not just smuggling, Darren whispered. Everything. Drugs. Phones. Weapons. Money. Brinsfield's been rotten for years, mate. The riot was just cleanup. He took another step closer. And now, you've got a dead officer, a stolen file, and your fingerprints all over the laundry room. Guess who the cameras are gonna blame? Ryan's eyes widened. You're lying. Am I? Darren grinned. The governor made sure the footage shows you sneaking in after lockdown. You're the perfect scapegoat. Always were. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. He realized now that every move he'd made was part of their plan. Even Miles, maybe the only person trying to help him, was a loose end they'd already tied up. So what now? Ryan asked quietly. You kill me too? Darren chuckled. Nah. You'll do it yourself. They'll find you trying to escape after killing a guard. That's how the story ends. Before Ryan could react, Darren lunged forward, swinging a metal bar. Ryan ducked just in time. The bar smashed into the wall, sparks flying from an exposed wire. Ryan shoved Darren back and ran. The prison alarm blared again, WEOO. WEOO. Guards' voices echoed in the distance, shouting orders. Ryan sprinted down the corridor, clutching Miles's badge in one hand. He could hear Darren's footsteps behind him, fast and furious. He turned a corner and burst into the staff room. Lockers lined the wall, numbers painted in faded white. He scanned them quickly, 10, 11, 12. Ryan dropped to his knees, fumbling with the badge. He pressed the broken end against the lock, click. The door swung open. Inside was a small black notebook wrapped in tape. Across the cover, in block letters, it read, Governor Thompson, Brinsfield Internal Audit. Ryan flipped it open and froze. There were names, dates, transactions. Not just inmates, guards, supervisors, even the governor herself. They'd been using the prison to run an entire underground network. And Miles had been documenting everything, planning to expose it. But before Ryan could take another breath, a shadow loomed behind him. You shouldn't have opened that. Darren. Ryan turned just as Darren slammed him into the lockers. The notebook flew across the floor, pages scattering. They struggled, grappling, punching, slamming against metal. Ryan managed to elbow Darren in the ribs and grab the notebook, but Darren grabbed his shirt and yanked him back. You're not walking out of here, Carter. Ryan twisted free, kicking Darren's leg out from under him. Darren fell hard, his head hitting the edge of a locker with a sick crack. For a moment, everything went still. Ryan stood there, breathing hard, notebook clutched in his hand. Darren wasn't moving. Then the lights flickered again, and the sound of boots thundered down the hall. Guards. Ryan panicked. If they found him here, with Darren on the floor and the file in his hand, it was over. He grabbed the notebook and bolted through the back door, running toward the maintenance stairwell that led to the upper corridors. He didn't know where he was going anymore. All he knew was that Brinsfield wasn't just a prison, it was a machine, built to hide corruption. And now, he was the one piece that didn't fit. As he reached the top of the stairs, he could hear shouts behind him. There he is. Stop him. Ryan ran faster, bursting into a narrow corridor lit by flickering lights. At the end was a metal door marked, Authorized Personnel Only. He threw his shoulder against it, it swung open. Cold night air hit his face. For the first time in months, he saw the outside. The prison yard stretched below, silent and empty. The walls were high, barbed wire glinting under the moonlight. But Ryan didn't care. He wasn't stopping now. He clutched the notebook tight and whispered under his breath. If I can just get this out, someone will believe me. Then a voice came from behind. Come. Female. Familiar. You won't be getting it out, Mr. Carter. Ryan froze. He turned slowly. And there, standing in the doorway, was Governor Thompson, her face expressionless, her hand resting on a guard's pistol. The rooftop truth. The cold wind whipped across the rooftop, cutting through Ryan's thin prison shirt. He took a step back, his eyes darting between the governor and the edge behind him. Below, the searchlight sliced through the fog, scanning the yard like restless eyes. Governor Thompson's voice was calm, too calm. You've made quite a mess tonight, Carter. Ryan clenched his jaw, holding the black notebook tightly against his chest. You killed Miles. You framed me. And for what? To keep your dirty little empire running? Thompson sighed, as if disappointed in him. You think this is about money? You think I wanted this? She took a step forward. This prison was falling apart long before I arrived. Drugs, violence, gangs, I did what I had to do to keep order. To keep the public safe. Ryan's voice cracked with anger. By selling out the very system you swore to protect? Thompson's mask of control slipped for the first time. You don't understand, Carter. The ministry turns a blind eye as long as numbers look good. Inmates disappear, paperwork vanishes, and no one asks questions. You were supposed to serve your time quietly. But you just had to dig. Ryan took a step closer, eyes burning. Maybe you fooled the system, but you won't fool the world. He pulled the notebook from his chest and tossed it toward the edge, but before it could fall, a gust of wind flipped it open midair. Pages fluttered like feathers, scattering across the rooftop. Governor Thompson lunged forward, grabbing his arm. You don't know what you're doing. Ryan twisted free, yelling. You're the reason people think UK prisons are soft. You hide behind clean walls and nice speeches, but inside, it's rot. It's greed. It's lies. Thompson's expression hardened. You think exposing this will change anything? You're a convict. No one believes you're kind. Ryan's eyes flicked to the searchlights below. Guards were running toward the building. He turned back to her, voice steady. Then maybe they'll believe the truth when it comes from your own words. He raised a small bodycam clipped beneath his collar, blinking red. He had been recording every word. Thompson froze. Her face drained of color. For the first time, she looked afraid. What did you? Before she could finish, the rooftop door burst open. Guards flooded in, weapons drawn. Ryan dropped to his knees, hands in the air. The governor shouted. He attacked me. He's lying. But the lead guard, Sergeant Blake, looked down at Ryan, then at the bodycam's blinking light. He knew. Everyone did. The aftermath. Weeks later, news headlines flooded the UK. Governor exposed in prison scandal. Undercover recording reveals corruption inside HMP Brinsfield. Governor Thompson was arrested. Darren and several officers were charged with conspiracy, fraud, and cover-up. And Ryan Carter? He was transferred to another facility, but this time, under witness protection. He'd lost his freedom, but not his voice. His story became the spark that forced the government to re-examine how prisons truly operate. Not the clean corridors they show on TV. Not the second chances promised in press statements. But the reality, where power corrupts, silence kills, and truth hides behind locked doors. The truth behind the walls. Narration fades in, slow, haunting, reflective. They call it rehabilitation. They say UK prisons are humane, places for change, not punishment. But behind the painted walls and tidy reports lies a darker truth. Footage rolls, empty hallways, flickering lights, closed cell doors. It's not about what you see on the outside. It's about what's buried inside, the deals, the fear, the silence. Then, a brief shot of Ryan looking out a small window, dawn light hitting his face. Ryan Carter's story isn't unique. It's just the one that finally got heard. Because sometimes, the real crime isn't what happens inside the prison. It's what's allowed to happen behind it.